Hey everybody, we are live on the Choptank River, Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. What you see on the deck of the Patricia Campbell are some reef balls. As you can see in the comments, we have lots of different partners that helped get us here today on the Choptank River CCA. Some fantastic partners and members of the team. There's Jaleesa and Damon from our communications team, Lenny Rudo, Fish Talk Magazine, Zach Dittmar's Fish Talk. We have Jim Talbot, one of our great supporters of Living Reef Action Campaign on the Eastern Shore through Gillespie Concrete. Dave Connolly and his son. They have built the reef balls, some of the reef balls on the deck at their school, Saints Peter and Paul, last year. So I hope some students are out in the classroom from that school checking this stuff out. If you're logged in via Facebook or YouTube, you should be able to comment and we can see those comments. So feel free to share any questions you may have as you see the work we're doing. Over here is Herb Floyd, one of our Eastern Shore members and a hardworking volunteer who helped build many of the reef balls that are on the deck. Some of what's on the deck here started as a project that was planned pre-pandemic and then executed during the pandemic to have 4 different reef ball builds on the Eastern Shore, 2 of which took place in Talbot County, 2 of which took place in Dorchester County. We worked with Shore Rivers to spread the word and get some great volunteers and community members out participating in those reef ball builds. And we've been waiting quite some time to be able to place them here in local waters. I'm happy to be out here doing that today. As you see on the Patricia Campbell, there's a crane. Dangling from that crane is the first set of reef balls. There are what appears to be 4 of them. What happens is a cable goes down through the middle of the reef ball with a loop on the end of it. It comes out the side of the reef ball. It has a hardened steel pin or aluminum pin going there. And when the crane is cinched up tight, all the reef balls are held as you see. But as soon as that goes down to the bottom in roughly 18 feet of water, the buoys that are on there will lift the pin out of the way. The cables will release and the reef balls will sit there as a quad group on the bottom. This reef site has received a lot of different material over the years. It is a major oyster restoration site where lots of shell has been placed by the Department of Natural Resources in the past. It is an oyster sanctuary, just in one section of the river right here. There's lots of other areas in the Choptank complex, both on the Talbot County and Dorchester County side, where there is sanctuary bottom. There's a number of oyster leases throughout this waterway, and there's a good bit of wild harvest, which occurs right here in the background. That is Broad Creek there. And the area outside of it is a popular power dredging area. The area up inside it is a hand tong area. Then we have the houses off in the distance here is Tillman Island. This is Harris Creek. Harris Creek is closed to harvest. You can see the buoys are now floating on the surface, so the reef balls were delivered down to the bottom. And what the crew will do is, again, hook up another 4 reef balls up on the stack there and place them to the bottom. Here, these will act as important 3-dimensional substrate, and it is the perfect time of year to be placing these in the water. The calcium content in the concrete mimics the oyster shell, and the spat, the baby oysters, which will be spawned throughout this period of warming up. As the waters warm up and oysters start doing their thing, those spat will then float around after being born in the water column and hopefully attach to these reef balls. And beyond oysters, there's lots of other animals that will attach and spawn up in the water column looking for a place to attach, things like anemones, barnacles, tunicates, lots of other critters that also filter the water and provide food and structure and some water clarity as they graze on algae and remove sediment out of the water column, helping the water clarity here in the river. This is a popular fishing spot, again, also because of the shell pile that I talked about that DNR has placed here over many years in different restoration projects. Also throughout this river, both the commercial fishing industry and restoration groups do restoration, whether it's in the sanctuary or a harvest area. The county oyster committees that harvest wild oysters in this region reinvest in placing shell back in the river. Also spat on shell, which is the baby oysters placed on shell. Way up the Choptank here is the Horn Point Lab, where much of that work happens. And up there to the northwest around the corner and up towards Eastern Bay, if you flew a plane that way, you'd find Ferry Cove Shellfish Hatchery, a new private shellfish hatchery which is supplying larvae out to partners in the region. And so throughout the Chesapeake Bay, more and more oyster larvae is being produced through hatcheries, and that provides more capacity and more increased opportunity for commerce and for replanting, whether it be restoration, aquaculture, or for wild harvest. And that is why we've seen an uptick in general oyster populations and an uptick in harvest and aquaculture over the last decade plus. Really good news for everyone that relies on the Chesapeake Bay. What do you guys think? Say hi to the world. Some of our great volunteers and members. Lenny, what do you think about this fishing spot?
Pretty darn cool. This has always been a sweet spot, and now it's going to be even sweeter.
That's right. The airplane wreck is just north of us here, right?
Yep.
Always a very popular spot.
Yep.
Hopefully we get some croakers coming back here at some
gosh.
point. Did you find some?
We've caught, what do we call here? Croaker, spot, rockfish, bluefish, black drum, flounder. The list goes on and on. I'm just not thinking of it.
Oyster toads.
Oyster toads, absolutely.
Black sea bass.
Yes, yes.
Probably some sheep's head and some spadefish are possible. I know they've been caught by anglers here in the past, I believe.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I know the Midshore Fishing Club, or formerly MSSA Dorchester, did some work out here one day, or fishing out here one day, and I think they recorded like a dozen species, but it may have been more. And of course, the Midshore Fishing Club is such an important partner in this deployment. Many of the reef balls on the deck and being splashed right this moment are built by them and their partners. So a great group of volunteers in the Cambridge area. Thank you to Cheney for providing concrete and a footprint to pour these reef balls at the mix plant in Cambridge. They have a long history of doing this work, and that's why this reef site is called Clint Waters Reef. Clint was one of the most intrepid volunteers to get this program started with their club, along with many other folks. And it's great to honor his memory and his hard work, his legacy in creating this important fishing spot in the region. Again, a reminder, if you want to post a comment, we can reply to it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. So to give you an idea of scale, this boat is around 60 feet wide, long and just around 20 feet wide. There's roughly 140 reef balls on the deck right now, maybe a few more than that. And yesterday, this team, as they steamed from the western shore, they deployed a little bit over 60 reef balls at this site yesterday. Gave us a free storage location. Thank you so much. And thank you to Rob Hardy and the team at Composite Yacht for transporting these from the parking lot to the bulkhead. We couldn't do that without your help. And all this work is being done in a site called a Maryland Artificial Reef Initiative Permitted Reef Site, or MARI. And so the MARI program is managed by Mike Malpezzi at Maryland DNR, and we at CCA work with them to make these projects happen as the MARI fiscal agent. And so we work with marine contractors around the bay. We try and prioritize sites, and the MARI program is actually going through a process right now where we're trying to identify new sites and new locations so that more people can be connected to the habitat enhancement work that we're doing and access it from whatever kind of fishing approach they want to take, whether it be shoreline, kayak, small boat, large boat. We have a diverse opportunity here in the Chesapeake Bay, and we want to provide those diverse opportunities for people to go fishing in different habitat zones throughout the Chesapeake. As you might be able to read there, I think there's a great slogan on the side of the Patricia Campbell there: saving oysters for shellfish reasons. Nice dad joke.
I love that.
Pun.
I love that.
So you can see just one step at a time, one quad of reef balls at a time. The team is getting the job done. Hello, Kathy Kerbo. Kathy's the executive director of the Reef Ball Foundation. We couldn't do any of this work, we or CBF or Mari, without the Reef Ball Foundation and the fantastic visionary work that they did to make this a reality, to make reef balls a reality, for them to come in all different sizes to provide benefit to ecosystems around the globe. Again, yes, I said the globe. I think it's 90 plus countries. Carl's adding the CCA sticker to the Patricia Campbell. Good work, good form. Yes, sir.
What are the floats on for?
So the floats, as you all see, you might be able to see right there on the edge of one of the reef balls, a cable goes from the hook in the middle there, and there's 4 of them. 4 cables, each one has a loop on either side. So the 4 cables are clipped on the hook, that's one side, and then the other loop goes down through the middle of the reef ball, out the side, and then when it goes out the side, there's a rod connected to the rope. You see that red one there. And so when all the reef balls get to the bottom, everything will be slack. It will allow the buoys to float to the surface. They pull the pins out of the loop, and you'll see that the rig, once it goes down, will bring itself back up to the surface with those 4 buoys floating the cables and such back to the surface. On the crane is Dan, a longtime member of the CBF restoration team, an expert at operating this crane. And if you look on the rail right here by the gentleman in the light shirt, there's that white thing that is a GPS antenna. And so we can precisely mark the location of each quadrant of reef balls. The vessel is drifting. We have Carl Willey, the captain, up in the wheelhouse, keeping it on location, monitoring that we stay within the reef site. And as the cable slowly lowers to the bottom, you'll see a piece of tape coming down. That helps Dan and the crew on the deck understand the water depth in relation, or where the reef balls are in relation to the bottom. On that piece of tape, there you go. You see the cable slack on the crane. So now he's going to do some jiggling and get this rig to release.
Oh.
So
I don't see red yet.
So it's a little hit and miss here. We have 3 of them have deployed. Looks like the red one is still attached. And that happens because of the variability in the reef balls and the size of the holes. And so some of the cable could get stuck. There you go. So now the red one has released. That's the signal as it floats to the surface. So again, all 4 of those reef balls are now placed on the bottom. Also on the deck here, you see the triangle-shaped reef product. That is a reef pyramid designed by our good friend at the Ocean City Reef Foundation, a leader in the Maryland Artificial Reef Initiative, but really a leader doing work on the ocean front, Captain Monty Hawkins. He designed the reef pyramid to work similar to reef balls. They happen to stack on top of each other, and they provide similar relief, a similar place for animals to attach, a similar place for animals to hide, and great reef substrate. So we're proud to be working with Ocean City Reef Foundation and some partners who help build these reef pyramids along with our reef balls to provide some diversity on the bottom and how we approach reef building and get more people involved. On the boat here in the blue shirt is Jim Talbot, the president of Gillespie Concrete. Gillespie has been building reef pyramids at their plant in Kent County and helping out with the project. They have about 250 on the ground at their facility. Have a number of reef balls ready. We've been waiting for this permit to open, and now that it is open, we have a large area to place the structure on top of shell in different portions of this reef site to provide mounds and really recreate what the Chesapeake Bay had in all the different oyster bottom way back in history when we had oyster rocks and a lot more structure and a lot more shell volume in the bay. It has been harvested or lost over time to disease, siltation, oysters being harvested, and the shells not being returned to the bay. But at this point, I'm confident to say that there's a lot of really hardworking people focused on making sure that we have enough substrate and we're returning as much as possible to the bay. We focus on the reef ball program to do our part, but oyster shell cannot be beat. The bottom line is the bay needs more hard substrate, and the more and more we can provide in the right places, the more and more filtration capacity and biodiversity of the ecosystem that we can have.
So these reef balls do not have oysters on them currently, correct?
That's correct.
How long until they start growing them? Do we know?
So spawning of oysters will occur right about now, early June. There's typically more than one spawn, and it's going to vary around the bay area. But hopefully these are going in right now to meet spat, which are up in the water column. And so mom and dad oyster are down on the reef, and when the time is right, the gametes go up into the water column. The baby oysters are made. They float around for roughly 2 weeks, then would attach to an actual reef out here in the river. These reef balls, calcium-rich concrete, is going to mimic the oyster shell for those oysters and other animals. And so hopefully, the short answer is in the coming weeks, there may be some microscopic attachment to these reef balls, and then over time we will see year after year more and more generations of animals attaching oysters, and then even more. And by design, the reef balls are built to last for quite some time in the system, but the idea is that generation after generation after generation of oysters can attach to the exterior. If the concrete were to degrade and fall apart, you ultimately are left with a oyster shell pile because of those multiple generations of living oysters which can attach to these reefs. Reef balls are used around the world, as I was saying earlier, and support coral growth in different areas of the world. And there's some amazing photography and pictures and information. Go to reefball.org, reefball.org, and you can find out ways that even you could start building reef balls and volunteering and supporting this important work, no matter where you are in the world. Again, the Reef Ball Foundation, founded in 1992, has been doing work in now more than 90 countries around the world. We have a fantastic team. Todd Barber, their president and founder. Kathy Kerbo, their executive director. We have Larry Beggs, who's working hard down in Florida and around the world every day, building reefs for communities to benefit from. Megan, I see your comment that your son helped make reef balls at his school many years ago, and it was a great experience. I'm glad to hear that. And we're glad to hear that he's connected to fishing. We often say at CCA, habitat today equals fish tomorrow. And the answer to why is, well, A, they're good to eat, and B, they're fun to catch. So no matter how you choose to participate in fishing, get out here and find the habitat and you'll find the fish. As we were talking about whether these have oysters on them or not right now, that's a great question, because sometimes these reef balls go over with oysters already attached. That was a big part of why we call our program the Living Reef Action Campaign, because sometimes we do get to place life directly into the bay, and other times, depending on the time of year and the specifics of the project, we do not the live oyster reef balls. So last year, we placed a total of 600 reef balls with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation at the St. Mary's River. 300 of those received oyster spat, which are hatchery-reared baby oysters that get placed in tanks attached to the reef balls, placed on the deck of the Patricia Campbell in a similar fashion, and then put into the water as quick as possible to avoid any sort of mortality that being up in the air and being impacted by the sun and temperatures and such can have on those young oysters as they've already attached to the reef balls. So picture these reef balls stacked up in a big fiberglass tank, 3,500 gallon tank. Roughly 100 of them this size will fit in a tank. I'm sorry, 50 per tank. And about 1 million oysters are placed into it. So you can hear that thud on the deck. That's why the folks are wearing protective equipment, and there's trained professionals up on the deck here. We are just watching from alongside. One of the reef balls fell down there. These weigh just shy of 200 pounds a piece. They vary in wall thickness, in height, in number of holes. In our program, quite often we're building these with school students. In fact, some of the ones that were deployed yesterday were built by Calvert County fifth graders. Now for the 4th school year, we've just completed working with every single Calvert County 5th grader through their CHESPAX program. And again, some of the CHESPAX reef balls are now on the bottom under the boat here. We look forward to continuing that program with Calvert County in the fall. Our program started 10 years ago with Carroll County Public Schools in Westminster and the Carroll County Career and Tech Center. We loaded up a tractor trailer last week that had to get delayed in placement to Noah's Reef, but will be going to Noah's Reef very soon. So Carroll County, thank you so much for all your leadership over the years. Mike Campanelli at the Tech Center, Brian Shoemaker, the Outdoor School and STEM leader, Michael Eisenklam. So many other teachers throughout the school system have helped year after year after year, and there's nothing better from a CCA perspective than coming out to a school and watching the teachers just lead the charge, doing what they do best, knowing our program, knowing this technology and how reef balls can connect people to the bay, and makes me very proud to see all that continue to unfold as we evolve our program here at CCA. Finally turn the banner on at the bottom. You can now see there's ways to get involved with CCA. Send us an email, information@ccamd.org, or visit our website. As a membership organization, we have members, like I said, Herb Floyd, Jim Talbot, Dave Connolly. Did you bring your guitar? Play some live stream music? All right, folks, so you can see we're picking away at this reef. Again, the Clint Waters Reef at Cook's Point can be found in many different ways, but as you're looking at your chart plotter on your screen, there you go, Lenny.
Yes, I am
You're the
marking
man.
every single drop.
There you go. So this box here, that boundary is where all these different alphabet soup of government agencies review the permit and review the plan to do restoration work here and say, this meets all our needs for navigation, so on and so forth. And a permit has opened up for this area. What I was saying was that as you go throughout your chart, you can find boxes. Sometimes they'll say authorized fish haven. They'll speak to the minimum clearance, and that relates to the minimum clearance from the material up to the surface. And so those reef balls are roughly 2 feet tall. You can see we're in 23.4 feet of water. And so there's plenty of clearance there to meet the 15-foot clearance need that this reef has. Some reefs also have an 8-foot clearance, and I could be speaking incorrectly about the clearance here at this one. But either way, that's either an 8 or a 15 if they're out in the deeper water, and always out of a place where major navigation occurs, so we don't have any accidental groundings or folks interacting with the reef. You can see these piles of shell. I was speaking with Captain Carl about this earlier, that these are great spots, that DNR's put a lot of shell there for restoration. And so those are great spots to fish. All those spots do have additional substrate like reef balls. This is one of the early places to receive reef balls in the early 2000s here in the bay. And as we were speaking about earlier, it's had lots of different species of fish utilize it. And so there's lots of different fishing opportunities. If you want to have some fun out here, I suggest little hooks, things like a sabiki rig, maybe some bloodworms. And you can catch a whole number of different species. Fishing with peelers, anchoring up and fishing back to the reef is a great technique.
How many poles we put in today, Dave?
About 145 on the deck or so. We had about 65 come over from the western shore yesterday. So a little bit over 200, maybe 210. The boat can handle a few more, and so we're going to plan some future deployments here. And can also work with any marine contractor. So if folks would like to get involved and talk about pricing and opportunities, we do have more reef balls that we want in the water. You want to get out there enhancing your fishing sooner than later. They'll do a lot better job on the bottom of the bay. Attracting fish, creating a home for fish, a place where juvenile fish can grow up. And of course, as we gain more and more shellfish and animals that filter our water, eating algae, the clearer our water gets, that means more grass is growing. That means more crabs, more juvenile fish that will grow into big fish, and that the system will be healthier the clearer the water is. And with the grasses provide oxygen into the water column. They also can help stop sediment and hold it from floating around or blowing around in winds and tides. And as I said, they're a place for juvenile crabs and lots of other important animals to live. Even seahorses live in our submerged aquatic vegetation here around the Chesapeake Bay. All right. Well, thank you all for following along. Lenny, I think we have some fish to find now, right? We did start the morning finding a couple of rockfish, and again, I guarantee there's a number of species under the boat right now. So if you get a chance to get out here on the Choptank River, check out the Clint Waters Reef at Cook's Point. Again, there's already existing structure here. Spend some time looking around, trying different spots on the reef, and you never know what you might catch. And we'd love to have you involved in future reef ball building activities with CCA. Last year, we held 35 different two-day reef ball building activities. And so far this year, we've completed 24 of them, starting in the middle of March. So we will build reef balls through the middle of November, and we will continue to plan future reef deployments throughout this year. Our goal is always at least 4 deployments throughout the year, and we are on track to complete that. Also looking to our partners at VMRC in Virginia to place some reefs there. It's 1 and maybe 2. And so it really takes a village. Thanks again to all the folks that get involved in this work, and I look forward to talking with you and sharing with you our next project, and hopefully seeing you somewhere along the way in 2025 with CCA. Thank you.